Hello, my name is Michael Mosick. I'm the Equipment and Facilities Supervisor for the Northeast Independent School District. And today I have with me Anna Hanley. She is a member of the MIT program,
Yes.
so a manager in training. And she's going to be helping us, showing us some of the different techniques and some of the safety things on how to use a knife. And also give you 8 points that you can use in the kitchen to be able to safely use these knives and hopefully not get cut or hurt in the kitchen. Now let's go over the knives first of all. Anna, maybe you can explain to us what the 3 knives are.
This is a 8-inch chef knife, and this is a 9-inch serrated knife, and this is a paring knife.
What are some of the other things that we have here on the table that we're going to be using?
We have the cutting board, and we have the moist towel that we're going to be using, and we also have this glove that you can wear to keep your hands safe.
Okay, very good, very good. So let's break this down a little bit. So the 8-inch cook's knife, what would we use that for in the kitchen?
We would use this for chopping onions, maybe cutting your apple in half, celery and some cilantro for chopping. And the serrated knife, we would use it for slicing tomatoes and slicing bread. And the paring knife, we would use this for strawberries or kiwis.
Now you mentioned the damp towel. What do we use that for?
Well, the damp towel, we use it to put it underneath our cutting board to keep it from sliding while you're cutting. And you want to bring it close to you so you have more control, more surface.
Okay, very good, very good. And then the cut glove, what would you use that for?
I would use this to when I'm holding the vegetable or the fruit. I would use it and just to make sure that I don't slice my fingers.
Okay.
Just keeps.
So if we wanted to, it provides us some added protection,
Yes.
right? To just in case we would nick that free hand,
Yeah.
that glove's going to prevent us from getting cut.
Yes.
So now that we're familiar with the different tools that we're going to be using today in the kitchen, we're going to discuss 8 different points or things that we can use in the kitchen to help us keep safe and make sure that we don't cut ourselves in the kitchen. So the first point that we want to cover is obviously a sharp knife is a safe knife. We never want to use a dull knife, and that's why twice a year we have a professional knife sharpener come in to make sure that all our knives are nice and sharp. Now if you do have a dull knife and you notice that it's a dull knife, don't use it. Get a knife that's sharp and we'll take care of getting that knife sharpened for you. Now another reason why we want to use a sharp knife is because if we ever would accidentally cut ourselves, it's a lot safer and it's going to do a lot less damage if we cut ourselves with a sharp knife than a dull knife. So we want to always remember to keep our tools in the proper working condition and always sharp. So the next point that we want to discuss is that we never want to grab a falling knife. So Anna, if you were using a knife and you had to walk away, what would you do? Where would you set the knife?
I would set the knife right here with the blade pointing away from me and not close to the edge in case somebody bumps it, it wouldn't fall. And if it does happen to fall, all you have to do is step back and let the knife fall, because most likely if you're trying to grab it, you're going to grab the blade because the blade is the biggest part of the knife.
Yeah, so that's a very good safety point there. So if something accidentally happens, if a knife falls, our natural intention is to try to grab it, right?
Yes.
So we're going to need to fight that, and if it starts falling,
Just
just
walk
step
away.
back, right? So it's a lot more cost effective and easier for us to replace the knife than to have to deal with somebody accidentally hurting themselves, cutting a finger or a toe. Point number 3 is we want to make sure that we know how to properly carry a knife. We keep our knives stored in knife racks, so when we're going to use a knife, we have to go get it. So Anna, can you demonstrate for us how we would carry a knife over to our workstation?
Yes. You put it on the side of your leg with the blade pointing out and the tip pointing down.
If someone asked you for that knife, how would you hand it to them?
With the handle with the blade pointing behind us.
So point number 4, we're going to actually start getting into how to use a knife properly. So when we're using a knife, how should we use it? How should we cut with a knife?
You want to grab it firmly. I have small hands, so I grab it more at the base. If you have bigger hands, you can hold it a little closer to the blade, being of the blade, but for smaller hands, right here.
Okay. And then when you go and you're cutting, how do you actually cut? Do you cut towards you, or what would be the best way?
You want to cut away from you, pointing the blade away from you.
Okay, so never towards you.
Just out.
Okay, and why is that, obviously common sense, but why is that a good idea never to cut towards you?
Because you have more likely that if somebody bumps you, you can cut yourself.
Point number 5, when you're using the knife, we already talked about make sure that we cut away from ourselves, right? But when you're cutting something, what do you need to focus on when you're using the knife?
The blade. You really need to be concentrating. Your eyes needs to be at all times on that blade when you're cutting. You can't be talking to your co-workers while you're cutting. And if they do ask a question, you need to put it down and go ahead and answer them, and then you can go back to your job, but never talk and chop at the same time, because you're most likely that you'll cut your finger.
Right. So we want to, when we're actually cutting something, we want to make sure that we keep focused on what we're doing.
Yes.
And try not to be distracted by something or anything else going on in the kitchen.
Yes, and if you're still not very comfortable with the knife, you can take your time and go slow. It would be safer.
So point number 6, when we're done using the knife and we need to get it clean, what would you say would be your recommendation on cleaning the knife?
As soon as you're done with the knife, it's best if you wash it yourself, and that way you can put it on a safe place, would be the knife rack. But if you have to leave it, you want to leave it on top of the counter so everybody knows that there's a knife right there, so they can be careful. But you never want to put it on the soapy water, because most likely somebody's going to get cut when they go down there. Nobody's going to know if there's actually a knife.
Okay, very
in the
good.
water.
Very good. So point number 6, we never want to put a knife in the 3-compartment sink in the soapy water. Point number 7, we're going to start getting into actually the technique of cutting, right?
Yes.
So when it comes to the cutting board, why do we use a cutting board instead of maybe glass or the stainless steel counter? Why do we use the cutting board?
Because if you try to cut in here, your knife might slip. The cutting board just keeps it nice and smooth for you, so you don't lose control.
And what about the blade itself? If we would cut on metal or glass instead of the cutting board, what would that do to the blade?
Well, you and me, it's going to make it dull, so it's not going to be as sharp, so which is not good if you happen to cut yourself, like you mentioned before, because it's more of a
danger if it's a dull knife.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So then we want to make sure that we always use a cutting board when we're going to be doing any kind of cutting, chopping, or dicing.
Yes, always the cutting board.
Point number 8 is we always want to use the proper knife for the job. We have 3 knives, right, that we showed in the beginning of the demonstration, and we always want to make sure that we use the proper knife for what we're cutting, right?
Yes, yes.
So what would be an example of that?
Like you said, I mean, if you're going to use a chef knife, we use this for our apples or onions and chopping any large vegetables. Serrated knife is mostly used for tomatoes and bread, and the paring knife is for smaller fruits like strawberries and kiwis.
Now we're going to demonstrate some of the items that we would cut using the 8-inch cook's knife. Anna, why don't you go ahead and show us some of the things?
We're going to cut first the apple with the 8-inch chef's knife. You want to hold it in between. That way you know you're not going to cut yourself, and you just push down like that. And that's how we cut an apple. Same thing, the onion, we start by cutting it in half.
Okay.
You want to cut the tip off. You want to make sure you pull your fingertips back.
Okay.
Your thumb is back here, because if you leave it up here, you're most likely to cut the tip off your thumb off.
Okay.
So we're gonna dice this onion. So we're just gonna.
So you're making some indentions into the onion, not cutting it completely through, right? Mm-hmm. And as you're doing that, you're cutting away from yourself, right?
Yes. Grab it. You just kind of move your hand as you go back, and you get chopped onion.
So what's the next item that we're going to do?
We're going to do the celery next. You want to cut the tips off.
Okay.
And this one, you're just going to, same thing, you hold it, thumbs behind, and you just kind of rocking motion.
Moving your fingers back as you go?
Yes. cut the celery. We're gonna do a carrot. And the carrot is a little hard to do because it's round. So what you can do is you can cut it in half. It's too long to cut. That way you wanna cut one part off, so that way
Giving yourself a flat
surface so it's not rocking back and forth.
That's a good point.
Strips here. And you can go back into that rocking motion. And that's how you dice a carrot.
So now we're going to demonstrate how to use the 9-inch serrated bread knife for cutting tomatoes. But first you're going to show us how to cut the bread. We have what? Hoagies and baguette?
And a baguette, a French bread.
Okay.
Hoagie. On this hoagie, because the way we do it, we just want to make a little pocket. So we don't cut all the way through. And that's how you get the little pocket for the meatball subs that we make here.
Okay.
And for the French bread, same thing. Just want to hold it. You can go diagonal if you want to make it a little more fancy, or you can just go straight down.
And so with the serrated, it's more of like a sawing
Yes,
action.
it's more of a sawing action. But that way your bread doesn't get all smooshed, because sometimes if you use the chef knife, then your bread gets really flat and ends up looking kind of ugly. So you can do this motion, or you can go also on an angle if you wanted to. If you want to make it a little more fancy.
Okay, very good, very good. Now on the hoagie bread, what if I wanted to slice it in half?
Then you smooth, get your hand that you're not using to hold it up.
Okay.
Make sure your fingertips are going up.
Okay.
And you just slice right through it.
Okay, so very good. So this may be another instance where we could use the cut glove, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that would help us to just be doubly sure that we're not going to cut
get
ourselves.
yourselves. Yes.
All right, very good. So we've shown how to use it cutting bread. Now, what else is the serrated knife good for to use in the kitchen?
You can use it for tomatoes when you're doing for your trimmings. So you can take the tips off, and that way you're not. It gives you a thinner slice.
And we're not smashing it.
And we're not smashing it.
We're not getting a lot of juice from it because we're using that serrated cutting motion, right?
And it's nice and thin. If you use this knife, you're gonna get uneven circles.
Okay.
So,
all right. So then when we're going to use the tomato, then we want to make sure that we use the
right knife will be the serrated knife, because it will give you a more even around the tomato.
Next, we're going to demonstrate using the paring knife. Anna, why don't you show us cutting a kiwi?
Kiwi. Same thing. You want to tuck in your fingers and just slice through it. You can even hold it. And that's it. It's cut into fourths. You can use it also, we don't have strawberry right here right now, but you could also use it to cut the tips of the strawberries.
Okay, very good. Now that would be, if we're doing something small like that, that would be a good time to use the cutting glove, right?
Yes.
Because you're actually cutting towards your free hand?
Yeah, the paring knife is the only knife that you use to cut towards you.
Right, so then that would be a good idea. If we wanted to, we could use that cut glove in that instance, right?
Yes.
So now that we've demonstrated the different ways and different techniques to use the three knives, let's just briefly recap what we've learned today. 1, we always want to use a sharp knife. 2, we always want to use the right knife for the job.
Yes.
3, we want to make sure that whenever we're carrying the knife or handing the knife to someone, we do it properly so that someone doesn't get hurt. We always want to keep our focus and attention on the knife blade and what we're doing. We never want to put the knife into a tank of soapy water, right?
Never.
And we always want to make sure that we always use the knives safely and properly and don't get distracted from what we're doing.
Yes.
Anna, we want to thank you for showing us all the different ways to use the knife safely and the different techniques, and we appreciate you taking the time to show us how to use them properly. So we also want to thank you for watching.